So as you know, I used to be known for broadcasting FGC events. That's basically what this channel was all about up until recently. And while I was not as active as before, I still partake in some of the larger events. Like I worked on EVO 2018. I'm going to be working on EVO Japan 2019. And the cool thing about FGC broadcasts and streams is that they're still very much grassroots. We're talking 1 to 2 man operations that are doing everything from house AV, changing scores, switching shots, and they all have their own equipment, and they kind of just, it's tied together by strings and it just makes it work. And even though the broadcasts have been becoming bigger, now you have E-League and EVOs on ESPN and Smashes on Disney, I still wanted to share the knowledge of what it takes to put together a broadcast, maybe for your local community or your local meetups, and just some techniques you can learn as you want to build it to a bigger scale. So one thing I want to say straight away is broadcasting fighting games isn't cheap, especially if you're going to be broadcasting from old arcade boards or old consoles. But wherever possible, I'll try and recommend some poverty options to get the job done. Speaking of consoles, that's the first step in the broadcast chain. You're going to need to split the video to go to the players and also to the capture card for the stream. You're also going to need to split up the audio so you can send it to the mixer. That way you can mix audio for the stream, audio for the commentators, and audio for the live audience. Since most modern fighting games are on consoles with an HDMI output, you're going to need to get an HDMI splitter that splits video to the monitor the player's on and to the capture card. And also make sure to buy a powered splitter so you don't introduce any lag to the gameplay. A good splitter to start with has 1 input, 4 outputs. That way you can do something like a head-to-head setup. If you're using older consoles, there are specialty splitters for those video signals like S-Video, Component, Composite. I'll link some splitters that I use in the description. Now that the video is split, we need to find a way to extract audio from the HDMI signal. And what you'll need is a device known as an HDMI audio de-embedder. What these do is you'll plug in the HDMI in and it'll have a pass-through to send HDMI to your capture card, and then it'll have a little 3.5 jack port that you can put into your mixer. Now, if for some reason you're streaming PS3, you'll need to be able to bypass HDCP. Now, these devices are a bit harder to find in the past due to piracy concerns, but they also can do the audio breakout as well. Now, if you can't afford or can't find one of these de-embedders, there is a bit of a workaround. If you have a monitor that has a headphone out port, you can kind of use that to extract your audio, but it's not recommended because it can be kind of hard to maneuver cables that way. Now let's talk cameras. At minimum, you'll need to start with at least 2 cameras, one for the commentary area and one for the player area. If your budget is limited, you should start with webcams, especially the Logitech C920s. And the reason for this is that you won't need to buy tripods because they can just mount on top of the monitors that the players use and the commentators use. Now, if you have a bigger budget and a PC that can support multiple capture cards, you can move on to consumer camcorders. This usually output through HDMI. And for events that need long cable runs and multiple cameras, you're going to need to switch over to SDI, which will require SDI capture cards. And you're also going to start needing to get the capture cards that have multiple inputs. I left some recommendations for each budget level in the description. Now let's go back to audio. You need a mixer for fighting game events. And you need a mixer that can take in your 2 commentators, your gameplay audio, and also your PC audio if you want to play any videos. Some nice to have features are aux channels so that you can send audio to the house so the audience can hear, and a talkback feature. That way you can communicate with your commentators if you have headsets. Speaking of headsets, the standard used for pretty much all fighting game broadcasts is the Audio-Technica BPH-S1. Now, these aren't the most comfortable to wear for long periods of time, but the audio quality is great and they also can isolate noise coming in from external factors. So as you know, most fighting game events are pretty loud. Now, if you don't have the budget for these, pretty much any microphone that you can find that you can plug into a mixer is good to start with. Now, to send audio to your commentators and to yourself, you'll need to buy what's known as a headphone amp. Make sure to buy a headphone amp that has enough outputs for you and your commentators. If your commentators will be far away, make sure to buy XLR cables and 1/4-inch cables to be able to extend the cables. Sending audio from your mixer to your PC is pretty simple. A lot of mixers have USB functionality, but most mixers you're going to send the main output into the line in port on your PC. Now, before you plug it in, you're going to want to get what's known as a ground loop isolator. This basically helps remove electrical noise from the signal. Most PCs or most events don't have the cleanest power, so this can take away buzz and hums and have cleaner audio. Now, if you want the highest quality audio, you're going to need to buy a professional audio interface for your PC. These are like the Focusrite Scarletts, and they can usually take in XLR straight from your mixer. Now that we've got audio and video going to your PC, we need to talk about what kind of streaming PC you need. At minimum, you'll need at least a quad-core processor and an NVIDIA 10 series GPU. in order to be able to produce a 720p 60 fps stream and also record at the same time. And I'll talk about why these components are important when we start talking about encoding later in the video. Choosing between a laptop or a PC depends on how much you'll be traveling with your streaming setup. If you think you'll be traveling a lot, I would recommend going with the laptop so it's less heavy stuff to carry around. But if you want a lot of expandability for capture cards and really high quality stream encoding, you're gonna have to get a PC tower. Now for capture cards, I pretty much only recommend using PCIe cards, especially the Magewell cards. Now on your PC, you're only limited by the slots that you have on your motherboard. Now on a laptop, if you have a Thunderbolt port, you can connect an expansion box like a Magma box to be able to connect PCIe cards there. Otherwise, you're pretty much limited to the USB ports on your laptop, and usually you can only connect about 2 capture cards there. Now that everything's connected, I'm going to show you how to get your streaming software set up. For this video, I'm going to use XSplit, but basically what I cover here can really apply to any streaming software. So first, I'm going to set up my most commonly used scenes, and I'm going to set this up in an area that's easy for me to click on in XSplit. So this is like my in-game scene, my commentary scene, my player cams, and then I'm going to set up the other scenes for ads and downtime loops. Next, you're probably wondering about overlays for like player scores and player names and lower thirds for commentators. Now, when you first start out, use whatever you can. Maybe you have a friend that can make some graphics for you, and you can just use the text source to update names and scores. Now, when you want the fancy overlays that are animated and can do all these cool tricks, you're going to need to use Stream Control. That's created by Farpanoodle. I've linked his website. He has a lot of documentation there. Also, BG Callisto, I've linked his video. He has a very comprehensive video that shows you from start to finish how to make really cool animated overlays. Now that your scenes are set up, next is to check your audio. So go into your audio settings in XSplit and then make sure your audio input is set to line in, and then adjust the main output of your mixer to make sure that you're not blowing out the line in input. You also might need to tweak the Windows audio settings as well. Next is projector mode. Projector mode basically lets you send out video to any monitors that are connected to your PC. Now when you connect a monitor, make sure it's set to extend and not duplicate. And basically you can send one monitor to your commentators so they can see the match, and then you can send another monitor out to the big screen so that the audience can see it. Now if you only have one output, which is pretty common with laptops, you can use another splitter to split the signal to the commentators and to the live audience. Next is streaming settings. Now the streaming settings are determined by your internet bandwidth and the amount of cores you have available. So basically, as a baseline, set the resolution to 720p 60 fps, set the bitrate to about 3500, and set the preset to very fast, and then begin increasing this to see your CPU usage go up until it's about 70 to 80%. And while you're doing this, make sure someone in-game is doing super moves or doing something with a lot of motion, because if you don't have motion and you try the same settings when there is motion, your CPU might basically explode. Not really, but just make sure you're using motion when you're testing these settings. Now go to your local recording settings and set the codec to NVENC if you have an NVIDIA GPU. If you don't, check if VCE or QuickSync is available. Also make sure to enable force constant frame rate, and I would recommend setting the quality level to just high. Now if you want to do a final check of your audio mixing before going live, connect a pair of headphones to your streaming PC, go into your audio settings and set that headphone as the audio preview headphone, and this will give you a preview of what your live audience will hear on the stream. Now that you've got a stream set up and running, here comes the hard part: putting on a good show. Just like fighting games, putting on a good FGC stream takes practice, but here's a few tips I can give based on my experience. Make sure to communicate with your commentators. Let them know before they jump on what kind of stream do you run. Is it a professional stream? It's a fun stream? What sponsors are there? Before you run any ads, give your commentators a heads up so they know to talk about it. And after the stream is over, make sure to kind of talk it over with them. Give them feedback. Let them know maybe things that you could have done better and they could have done better. But most importantly, make sure that you give them breaks, because a tired commentator is pretty hard to listen to sometimes. If you're going to be broadcasting an event that you don't run yourself, get to know the tournament organizer and the bracket runners. Nothing stalls a stream more than not having matches coming up or not knowing what's coming up next. Make sure to talk to the TO and have both of you understand that you're there to help each other grow. Make sure to read, but don't listen too much to the stream chat. Check the chat if you need to check stream stability or check audio levels or give an update on what's going on in the tournament. FGC chats can be pretty harsh. They're pretty hard on newcomers and they expect a certain level of quality. And I know it can be hard to hear negative feedback, especially when you're probably tired or you've spent so much money on all this. And also for your commentators, don't let them read the chat if you think they can get easily distracted. Try to create storylines and capture emotions. One of the greatest things about fighting games is the passion the players have for the game. Let the audience know about rivalries, and make sure to be quick on switching camera shots to capture a player's reaction to a close victory or defeat. This is what really separates a good from a great fighting game broadcast. Make sure to archive your content. Put your match videos up as fast as possible on YouTube before others do it. If you're looking for a good example on how to curate your content, check out Anime Illuminati's YouTube. The most important piece of advice I can give is to have fun. You're doing this because you love fighting games, and streaming should not get in the way of it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments. If this video was useful to you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and if you can, share the video wherever you think it might be useful. Alright, catch y'all later.